value of the county, we're number 5 when it comes down to what we bring in. And little, neighboring district is Overhill, actually has a higher, brings in more money from property tax than what we do. And in Nevada County, the next closest district to us in size, area, assessed value, everything is Higgins, and they're over $1 million a year more in property tax that they receive. It's like, so, don't know where we do. Penn Valley last year, in 2020, in 2019, they made the decision to move forward with looking at increasing our fire assessment to put on two more firefighters on duty every day. If we'd have had a crystal ball knowing that COVID was going to hit us about the time we were ready to go public with that and put it out for a vote, but we didn't have that crystal ball, and COVID came along, and unfortunately we were not able to get out and message real well, and the measure failed pretty badly to increase that revenue to the district. So we've been left doing what we're doing and providing the service with the budget that we have. And looking elsewhere wherever we can try to find those revenues. And now with what we're faced here, it doesn't make good sense for us to take over a fire district. And from my perspective, the optics of looking at this, that Penn Valley comes in and takes over the fire district and the station and the money and closes the doors and walks away and is not providing service to this community, is not an optic where we really want to be tenable. And nor does this community, from the Penn Valley fire side of it, that this is kind of going to, give us a black eye, and that's going to leave this community without fire protection or longer times to get there. And where is that response coming from? From Penn Valley, from Grass Valley, or from wherever. Penn Valley's unique, and you're with the Truckee side on the east side. So Truckee in Nevada County, Truckee Fires has ambulance, paramedics in the ambulance transport, and Penn Valley does that as well. So we're the only ones on this side of the county that have the paramedics in the ambulance transport. And where Chief Veteran says the fragility of the emergency response system. So I said we were down to 2 fire engines. Yesterday, while the drowning was occurring at the river, we had calls pending with no ambulances available to send to them. We were committed at the river with our ambulance, and there were multiple calls that occurred in North San Juan. There were multiple calls around the county. They were trying, the ambulance companies, we all sign agreements that we have to provide aid to each other. So AMR out of Placer County had no units available to send into Nevada County, and our next one is Bi County and Yuba Sutter. They had no units to send. So there was a period of time yesterday afternoon, if you'd called 911 for an ambulance, they'll get there when they get there. And when we reference that, the time delay is tissue damage. The longer you go without oxygen to your brain, your heart, your other vital organs, and those types of things. So, it's very important. And the time curve for the fire, on the fire side, is that the fire's going to double in size every minute that it burns, unless somebody does something about it. So, waiting an extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I don't want to be, hyperbole, but it does equate to life and death of when you're going to get there and when do you interact with people. So it's from our perspective with Penn Valley, it's like to take this on is without looking at trying to fix the funding mechanisms and those things is very difficult. Rough already has an existing fire assessment that can stay in place, but really when you look at the district of the number of parcels, they'd have each parcel owner in this district would have to pay around $1,000 to $1,200 a year to be able to keep this fire station staffed when they only have 700 parcels in the district. And I think it's a little under 600 of those parcels are built out. So they've got quite a few vacant parcels. So it's, if they go into a larger organization, we can spread that out. But
I'm going to cut you off there, because the more you talk, the bigger the problem becomes and the deeper the hole becomes. No,
I understand, yeah.
I'm not cutting you off. I don't do that. All the information has to get out, no matter how long it takes. But what I'd like to talk about next is have SR talk about the process. What does dissolution actually mean? What are the ramifications? Who's the administration body? We know that you've been acting as the chief, but what's the administration process during the dissolution? And then what are the next steps towards the actual annexation. So SR, you want to talk about the LAFCo process and
Sure.
what we can and cannot do as LAFCo?
All right, I will. Okay, as I explained before, right now we have 2 applications, one from Rough and Ready Fire Protection District to dissolve, then a second application from the Penn Valley Fire District to annex this territory so that they can be the successor agency. Under the process of, but as you heard, the Penn Valley proposal is conditional upon the completion of tax negotiations with the county. And so at this point, we have the Rough and Ready proposal for dissolution and an indication from the Rough and Ready board that they cannot provide services after the end of the fiscal year. So Rough and Ready has asked LAFCo to take action on the dissolution, which under this process, the commission would take action on the proposal at a notice public hearing, following consideration and review of the proposal and its consistency with LAFCO law and the commission's policy. Now, we're just digging into this right now. We're getting comments from affected agencies, and we'll be, comparing the proposal to the dissolution to, understanding the law, the statutory requirements, and the policy considerations, which would then be in front of the commission when it's ready to move that proposal forward. When the commission takes action on it, the commission would name a successor agency that would wrap up the affairs of the district, including the settling of debts and liabilities. For a single change of organization, i.e. just a dissolution, not accompanied by an annexation, for a single change of organization like this, the county would be named the successor agency. Meanwhile, as I said, the Penn Valley proposal will be moving forward. They have, in their resolution, asked for a tax negotiation, so that annexation application cannot actually be heard by the commission, can't be scheduled for hearing until those tax negotiations are complete. And we understand the county staff is now starting to dig into this issue on their own and will be working with the district to review the tax negotiation process. County staff has indicated that it's not yet prepared to move to the Board of Supervisors for policy direction on this. So consequently, to ensure that there is continued coverage in this area following the dissolution and prior to an annexation, there would have to be some kind of interim service arrangements made with the neighboring fire agencies in this area, and that would be very, a very desirable outcome of ongoing discussions with the neighboring agencies. Meanwhile, the commission can and act on the Rough and Ready proposal, and tentatively this matter would be taken up at a subsequent meeting of the commission scheduled for June 22nd. Are there any questions?
I have a question about the assets of the Rough and Ready Fire District. In the information you sent, I read that this beautiful station was largely funded, or at least by a grant, a FEMA grant, and there's, we heard there's a lot of granting coming in. Is there any complexity in that grant language that makes dissolution more difficult? Like, or, and we might not be far enough along yet to know, but was there anything in that money that came to the district that created this building that is problematic?
Almost always.
Almost all, yeah.
Well, I think I would ask Chief Wagner if he's aware of anything. I am not aware of that. The station is actually, I believe that the loan has now been paid.
It is.
Correct.
Is that
It's paid
correct?
off. Yes.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
it is.
I'm not aware, the grant funding for this was part of, the station was built in 2011, and it was part of the American, Reinvestment Act.
Right.
I don't believe that there was anything tied to that of what happened after the fact. It was, dedicated for the building. And they were looking for funding shovel-ready programs, and they already had the property, they had the plans, they had everything in place. They had a significant amount of money saved to build the building, so that's what got the whole thing started off. And at the end, there was some added costs, so they wound up with a mortgage against the station to finish off building it in addition to what they already had, plus the grant. That pretty much.
Yeah, but the building's paid off, so we're owner free, but I don't think there's any issue with that, because it's, yeah.
Or how about any of the other assets, the truck or anything like that, that there's no ties, there's nothing in any of those assets that has any complexity that would keep a dissolution from happening?
Not to my knowledge, that we paid off all of our debts, so we have no occurring debt except for the fire engine. And we have payments on that, and we're in discussion with Penn Valley with the annexation, that they'll assume the payment on that truck and keep it here at the station. So that debt would be transferred to Penn Valley. Yeah, other than that, all we're debt free.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Chief Wagner worked on talking to the bank, and it was an assumable loan, and he's already worked out all the details on that. So that's actually taken care of. They just need a couple signatures for that asset.
Right, and both boards have agreed to follow through with that.
So SR, before I open this up for public questions, so just to put it in perspective and timeline, on July 1st, potentially, depending on our actions on June 22nd, the county will then be in the fire protection district relative to administrating and operating the logistics of contracting for fire protection services on behalf of Rough and Ready. Is that kind of how it's going to work?
I think I'm gonna let Scott
All right,
speak to
Scott.
the successor agency responsibilities.
Okay.
Legally, the dissolution is effective as of the date of the recording of the certificate of completion. And that may or may not, and probably wouldn't be July 1st, because there is the 30-day reconsideration period. So we're looking at a minimum of 30 days before an actual legal transfer. Now, one would hope that the county would come in and start getting things ready, and that the other fire agencies would continue to provide aid as they have in the past. But the actual legal completion of the dissolution will take at least more time than July 1st.
I guess my question is, what assurances do the residents, I mean, besides the mutual aid or automatic assistance that exists while Rough and Ready exists, what assurances, and I'm not denying or dismissing what you guys are doing now, that you wouldn't do it after July 1st or whatever the date is, but what assurances do the residents have that they will have fire protection, emergency response services once the dissolution is complete?
There's no assurance.
No.
There's no assurance even with the district still in existence. In
I
Butte
just-
County, there's a fire
I just
district
wanna-
that hasn't provided service for 2 years,
Well,
and it's still in existence.
I was gonna save this for the end of the discussion, but just sitting here as the chair of LAFCo, as a resident of Nevada County, it just makes you that much more proud of, the working relationship that our first responders have for all the citizens of Nevada County. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that sentiment, but I just had to throw that out listening to this. Okay, any questions of the commission before we open this up for any questions from the public?
Can I respond to your question? Just so everybody understands, even though there's going to be a legal dissolution with Rough and Ready, because of the finances, they're going to shut their doors at the end of the pay period, at the end of June, and not respond. So there, once that happens, there is no more automatic aid or mutual aid agreements. So what's probably going to happen is the boards are going to get together and discuss this and talk about, yes, we'll provide service, but it'll be for a fee for service. Our board has not, we have not talked about that yet. We've got a couple months, but that's pretty much what we're planning on doing there. We'll have to have some income. It's not fair to the residents of Penn Valley to support all of the continuing sitting apparatus and staffing up here. We need some sort of a fee to kind of cover that. That's a temporary solution. We can only do that for a certain amount of time. And we'll be working with Grass Valley on that because they're the next agency to come down also. So that's what we're looking at doing, but you need to understand that can only go on for a certain amount of time. We cannot do that. It's not a long-term solution. Doing something with the tax allocation factors is a long-term solution. Is it? Hopefully that helps answer.
Yeah, that was, yeah, well, I appreciate that.
So one of the sheets that Director Nelson handed out to you was kind of a call response sheet. That's going back to from January 1st of 2022 through basically through the end of March. And if you look at that 170 calls in the Rough and Ready Fire District, that's 501 total calls that they responded to. Of that 213 to Penn Valley, that's where we're seeing, that's where Penn Valley is seeing kind of a trade-off, if you will, of the services that we've been providing. For me, is that their engine's been coming down and helping us. We recognize that. We help them out some, so we're in paying that back, if you will, to the district. Has been, putting me on loan, but as that engine keeps, the engine staffing available, that staffing keeps shrinking down and shrinking down. And that once it becomes no longer reciprocal, kind of, there's some laws on the books as far as automatic aid agreements that they have to be reciprocal. If they're no longer reciprocal, there's some legislation on that addresses that, of it being an impact. It's not supposed to be an impact to one community. We provide services for somewhere else. And so that kind of will play in.
Following the money, where does, after July 1st, where does the ad valorem tax go and the partial charges? Who collects that, and can that be used to pay for Penn Valley response?
It can. My understanding is that once the dissolution is approved, the county becomes the successor agency. The county's the bank then. The fire assessments, the ad valorem taxes would continue to be collected, would be held in the county treasury, and then we would be looking at the county essentially contracting for services with the two neighboring agencies, and we'd have to get together and figure out what are those contracts. And keep in mind that, it's like, is it going to be a per call charge? The difficulty with that is that you might be able to recoup your cost of the fuel wear and tear on your vehicle sending down here, but what you don't get is that relief of having additional crews on duty to be able to handle those calls, so you're still doing it with your existing staff. And when we're already taxed with, the call volumes of where those resources are coming from, it makes it a little bit difficult to make that a sustainable. So there will be, likely be some type of a sunset, that this, agreement with the county will go for a short period of time, that we will be able to provide those services.
So I would agree with that 100%. I mean, it's unfair for the residents of the city to be the de facto fire protection for anybody. So there certainly would be a fee or a contractual obligation from the county at that point, I guess, towards the city, as the director said. Again, we come back to impact and fragility, and if this system's going to fail, where's it going to fail? It shouldn't fail on the backs of those of us who are providing protection.
Still not enough money to do it permanently.
So
But
you mentioned it's about $1 million.
About $1 million.
There's not enough money.
It's money.
And those contract services, and keep in mind, the contract services won't be able to staff this fire station. So we'll be providing those services, responding from the city of Grass Valley, or responding from the existing Penn Valley station, so there'll be a longer response time. There is ramifications to it.
And to all your credit, you've been providing fire service here without fire hydrants.
We have one, come on, we have one.
Gordon, did you have a comment or something?
No, the question there was, came to my mind was, the county would be the successor in the meantime. Is there a requirement, if the county pays those bills, do they automatically have to be successor? So if you go out and do calls for them like that, to be paid for your time and services, the county's automatically required to pay you? Or do they come to the county and say, no, we're not gonna pay it?
Well, the county does become the successor, that is.
Understand?
Okay.
So there's
We
legal
have no
requirement.
legal requirement to respond out of our district.
I think that is still something, and I'm looking over at council, but I believe that is still something to be worked out, that the working group at the county level that I participate in, we met last Friday, we met again on Tuesday, and everybody's got some lengthy homework assignments to put together, if you will, to answer those questions. We don't know the answers to those questions just yet.
Okay,
We're
thank
still
you.
putting them together.
Well, I just want to throw a little bit out there. Again, I'm not going to deny the public to talk, but I want to talk a little bit more about LAFCo. And LAFCO, Cortese Knox Hertzberg, which is the doctrine, so to speak, of what guides us at LAFCO, Local Agency Information Commission, they had some pretty good foresight when they created the documents back in the late 50s and early 60s. And I'm going to start with the annexation. And one of the things that LAFCO looks at and considers with annexations are the existing ratepayers of the area that prior to annexation, are they going to be made whole? Are they not going to be the ones bearing the burden of that annexation? Meaning you bring new territory into an existing service area, are those ratepayers not going to be carrying that load? Is the annexation going to pay those costs? And so a little bit less familiarity with the dissolution, and we've heard about the financial shortfalls in the dissolution, and the fact that the annexation is going to be predicated on a tax sharing discussion with the county to try to close that gap between the cost of providing services and the current money involved. I would say, as a commission, we need to look at our ability with LAFCO to say, if we are going to look at the dissolution agreement, that as part of that dissolution agreement, that there is a formal agreement for reimbursement for response for the provision of services during that time until there's an actual annexation performed. So if the annexation is to be predicated on a tax sharing agreement, I think the dissolution needs to be predicated on, as much as we can provide, that there is a reimbursement agreement for the responding agencies during the interim. And I would just like to throw that out there as part of the discussion when we get to the end of this.
I just might suggest that I might not be so prescriptive, but to ensure that services are provided. An agreement that provides those services, however those are structured by the parties that deliver the services and pay for the services.
Correct. I mean, they need to make the language work, but I mean, I think
But something's gotta be there.
the county needs to know that when they become the receiver agency, there is an expectation that there will be some kind of reimbursement for response of the agencies that pick up the slack in the meantime,
Something's gotta
however that language works.
And it just needs to be clear that in June, we cannot afford to have firefighters at this station. So whether it's a tentative mutual aid, auto aid agreement that they carry on for a short period of time, or it's a solution by the county or LAFCO, either way, we're not going to have firefighters servicing the fire district.
And I think of the relationship that Town of Truckee had when we incorporated with CAL FIRES, there's CAL FIRES in the room, that we basically, the Town of Truckee pays a flat fee to CAL FIRE every year for their wildfire response since we became an SRA.
That's fine, but again, that will be the county who is the successor. It would be their liability and responsibility. And I just want to make sure that we're all trying to say the same thing, is that there needs to be money involved here.
The residents of Rough and Ready need to.
And the residents of Rough and Ready
need to
need
be
a fire
whole.
service.
Need to be
because-
whole for their fire protection emergency response.
Right, our residents need to have the assurance that they're gonna have a response. And their insurance companies are gonna wanna know that there's someone covering it, or they're, you know, that's the next whole step, that there'll be quite an uproar if the residents of Rough and Ready find out that they have no fire service, and suddenly the insurance companies are not gonna cover them because they're not in a district or covered.
Exactly.
They were left in a limbo, so.
All right.
Since we have Chuck back here from CAL FIRE, I know that there's been some comments about what CAL FIRE's enrollment, yeah, I'm not gonna let you get out without talking. So, you know, about what CAL FIRE may or may not, what their role may or may not be in this. About, you know, providing services in an interim, or in the case that they shut down altogether, if we don't have these agreements of what that might look like, or what that would be. That's okay with the group?
All right. Good morning, Landon Hack, North Division Operations Chief for CAL FIRE. So I have Nevada and Yuba counties, everything that is CAL FIRE. In a roundabout way, if it makes it to where the responsibility comes back to the State Fire Marshal's office, then it will defer to us. But in that being deferred, we wouldn't staff the station. Doesn't require that we come down and staff a station. We would provide a response until there's a solution. But that response would be coming from the closest CAL FIRE staffed resource. So in the wintertime, that would be the station up at Nevada City. And then in the summertime, it would be whichever one's closer to the call, either Smartsville or Nevada City. And that would still just be if those engines are available. So there's not an obligation to come and staff the facility. We would send something to the call, and it would be coming from somewhere, which would be the closest resource that we have available. So you can imagine what that looks like during the summertime. So outside of that, it would be the only ability for us to do something here would be through a cooperative fire agreement, or like a Schedule A contract, which I don't think is financially feasible.
What's the average price for Schedule A contract?
About 1.3 million for one fire
So,
engine,
yeah, a little similar to what we thought. Thank you.
depending on a lot of other stuff, but 1.3 to 1.5, somewhere in that ballpark.
Any questions? Well, thank you for being
Yeah.
here. All right, any other questions from the commission before I open up for the public? All right, so anybody have any questions that we haven't answered for you yet, or go ahead?
I'd like to Penn Valley and to explain how they're going to arrange through the county to make this work tax-wise, when we can't arrange through the county to make it work financially. And hopefully it won't go to the county because it'd be DOA, because they made it clear that they're not in the fire business. I'd like to know how they figure that's going to work, and tax-wise, when we can't make it work.
Well, looking at how fire districts get their money with the ad valorem, the Prop 172, and the special taxes, if we were able to annex this area, we'd bring our rescue tax, so that would be another form of income. And then there's still a shortfall to get up close to that $1 million. And that's where we have to work with the county to increase the tax factors to bring in some money. If that doesn't work, Penn Valley's not going to be able to annex.
So then it would fall back on the county.
Well, that's what the whole negotiation is. We have to open up whether it's the shared master plan tax agreement or whatever, we have to have some other funding. There is not enough money with all the funding sources put together to staff this 24/7.
And the piece there is that, you know, for Penn Valley, we're covering 92 square miles, 9,000 parcels. So, you know, with that number of parcels, if there's a change in the tax allocation factors, a smaller chunk off of that number of parcels will make a bigger difference versus 700 parcels total, if, you know, depending upon where the negotiations go with all of it. And it's, you know, it's more so of adjusting, you know, Penn Valley's existing funding revenue to make up the gap to keep this going. And those numbers don't, it's not that the public's gonna see a tax increase, it's where does that money get taken out of? And it can come from, potentially with the tax negotiations, from the other special districts, whether they be, you know, fire, you know, NID, the other fire districts, the cemetery district and resource conservation district, which would be in this area, or the county would come into the cut that the county would have to give up a portion of their funding. So that's where that tax negotiation is starting to go, is to get some answers. And, you know, right now, as far as the legalities of everything, and sitting down and starting that, getting that conversation going at the county level, to try to make those changes. And I don't, you know, when you look at, I think there's maybe some room for that negotiation to occur when we've got the lowest allocation factors of this other special districts. I think the difficulty for Rough and Ready going in to do that is when everybody else is in their 7 or 9% of that 1%, and Rough and Ready's coming in at 15%, they've already got a pretty good slice of the pie. And for the, you know, size of Rough and Ready, you've got about a $290,000 property in tax income in comparison to, you know, where Penn Valley is. You're already over half of what we're getting in property tax income. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of argument with the county then to try to fix the stuff for Rough and Ready. So hopefully, as the large, you know, as a bigger agency in more parcels, we've got the ability to be able to work with it and see where we can come out and meet in that and where it all comes out to.
Well, Penn Valley has a little bit of recovery with their ambulance. I mean, they don't run our district free, and when the ambulance transports, you get paid for it. So
Most of the
there's
time.
nothing the other way, you know. I
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
And, you know, so I mean, it's not 100% balance here. I'm not picking on Penn Valley, believe me, I'm not afraid of the fire district. I mean, everybody deserves what they can get, and I'm a firm believer in paid staff fire department. I think it's great here, but I'm a firm believer in volunteer help on top of that. I mean, for all the years this district's been in business, you know, we've saved a lot of lives with volunteers, and none of them ever was mad that we saved their lives and being a volunteer.
No. When the public calls 911, they don't care whether they're paid or volunteer. They don't care the name on the door of the vehicle or the patch that we're wearing or the uniform we're wearing.
A lot of them didn't have the certificate, but they had the ability to do what needed to be done to keep people alive when somebody got there. I think that our big, of course, I've got a real peeve with the county and 172 money, but it falls back a lot on the county that they're not supporting their half of the agreement with 172 money. If you read the whole 172 proposition, that it's fire and police, and it doesn't say that police is supposed to get more and the fire is supposed to get less. You know, you know, millions and millions of dollars goes into the sheriff's department, and the county gets, the fire districts all together get what, maybe $500,000 between all of them.
Yeah, about
the big dog gets the big money.
About
So that's how it works.
$880,000 goes to the fire agencies.
I just think that it's an unfair system at the county, so I wouldn't want the county to take over the district, because it'd be DOA.
Well, just to kind of keep it in perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, right now, on April 20th, 2023, Penn Valley and Grass Valley are providing the automatic assistance, and after the dissolution comes into effect, and after that 30 days, the expectation is that Penn Valley and Grass Valley will no longer have an automatic assist program because Rough and Ready won't exist. The only real difference with a mutual aid agreement and with the county reimbursing is, as Chief Wagner already said, is the response time. Right now, Rough and Ready is not open anyway. And so even with the automatic assist agreement, the response time is still coming from Penn Valley or Grass Valley. And after the dissolution, assuming that you have some kind of reimbursement agreement with the county, you'll actually be in better stead by being reimbursed for a call, but the response time won't change. So what the citizens of Rough and Ready are getting right now won't really materially change to them. The detriment is the response time until the station can be reopened with the proper funding. Is that a correct analysis of where we're at?
I think so. Believe so.
Yeah, but the detriment is that we're already down-staffed because we
Right.
don't have the money.
So as long as, so the response time doesn't change, and that's already in place now relative to the response time. Okay, so we just gotta make sure that the responding, assisting mutual aid agencies are made whole without the ability to fall back on the automatic assist because Rough and Ready won't exist anymore.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So can I say one little thing?
Huh?
Can I say one little thing?
Of course.
Okay, so one, this has been interesting. I've been on these meetings and I'm not speaking for the county right now, but we were in a meeting on Friday. The county all is showing up to the table. They just got the letter that came from our annexation, and that gave them that's the door that opened them to move forward to do the negotiating that's gonna happen and find out all that information. So the county is on board. It is gonna have to come back to the Board of Supervisors. And this 172 fund always just gets it, and I understand the fire part of it, but our county is one of 6 that even gives it to anybody, any of them. So I'm just saying, is there some movement in there? I hear what you're saying, but most counties don't even spend that on any of their fire. So our county, and I'm just speaking for myself, we believe that we understand the issue of fire. We support our fire departments. We're not in the fire business. Okay, so this is a little different, and we can all agree to disagree on this at all, but I just want to say, the paper has been accepted, or it came, right? We got this application for annexation, and it opened the door, and it has started. I have county council working on it. I have numerous people that are here listening in the audience right now today. So it's not like we're not taking this seriously. And I think that needs to be said, that as far as a LAFCo agency, we're doing our due diligence, and I think the county from here will move forward as well. So just on that note.
One more question.
Sure.
If CAL FIRE if it resolved and there was nobody taking it over for a temporary period of time, if CAL FIRE was taking the responsibility of running calls, not running the district, but running calls, doesn't these other districts have mutual aid with CAL FIRE to make them responsible to respond with them?
So on a wildfire, CAL FIRE is always going to respond, but I would have to lean that to,
Well, they have an automatic agreement, don't you, with CAL FIRE to respond?
for wildfire situations, I think. I don't know. What do you choose for that?
Some do. Not all of the agencies in the county have automatic aid agreements necessarily with CAL FIRE for the areas.
So we have an automatic aid with the city and consolidated out of the Nevada City Station, and I believe
We have one between Penn Valley and CAL FIRE, and it specifically names the response areas down towards the Yuba County side, in the Penn Valley jurisdiction, in the Yuba County side, not really to this direction.
and it's only for wildland fire.
Yeah.
It's a
We
full
go.
agreement.
We have an agreement with the city and Consolidated for basically closest resource concept up in proximity to the Nevada City Station, in that if there's a vehicle accident at the intersection of Nevada City and Ridge Road, that our engine's actually going to go to that call, along with 5 out of Nevada City to help them there. And then we go down into the Brunswick Basin to assist with commercial structure fires, just to bolster the staffing and help them there. And then we also run up Highway 20 corridor beyond the reaches of the county consolidated. So those are those agreements.
Thank you.
I have a question. So, and this is really a level setting question. So the ultimate goal that we all agree on is reopening this station in a way that's fully staffed. We all have a much better understanding of the complexity of getting there. But let's assume, just for the base of my question, that we are there, that we now have the money worked out and we are in a position that we can fully staff. Are there firefighters out there to hire to come back into, I mean, I just want to
Yes.
set the expectation for Rough and Ready.
Well, we do have, because they've been displacing the current firefighters. They have 2 on staff right now that are currently working, but they'll be receiving layoff notices in June. And there were 2 previous that, one of them I brought on as a part-time, the last 2 that I laid one off in March. He's a part-time employee for Penn Valley Fire. The other employee that left from Rough and Ready went to work for an ambulance company, and he is looking at being prepared to come back. So we do have some personnel, with part-time employees and some other things that I have going on, being able to fill that, plus, there's, open recruitments.
I guess that's what I'm
There-
really
yeah, there are-
asking. There are firefighters
There's not
out
a ton
there
out
if you
there,
need
but
to
there's,
recruit.
yeah.
Okay.
We've reached a point that, I know, most of the fire agencies in the room is that there was a day where there was lines out the door and down the block for fire jobs. And that doesn't exist anymore, is that you're lucky if you can get enough people to apply for the job that will pass a background investigation to fill the spots that you have. But they do exist, they are out there, there are some of them out there.
So I have a question.
Sure.
If this firehouse closes down, they have one fire hydrant, which to my belief is supplied by a water tank up on the hill. So that's a finite source of water. With all the water that flows in this county, why don't we have a hydrant system, a fire hydrant system that at least runs down Rough and Ready Highway, so that if the firehouse is not here and it's not staffed, where does CAL FIRE in a wildfire situation, where does it get its water supply? Do they have to go all the way up to Bethany Springs to refuel their water tenders, or down to Penn Valley? So we're caught in the middle with actually no way of putting out a wildfire. We have no water, right? Or we have just finite sources of water that will, in a wildfire situation, will go dry very quickly. Where do we get our water, and why don't we have a hydrant system?
Talk to NID.
I know.
That's a question outside my pay grade. But perhaps Go ahead.
A proposal, it's called the Backbone Extension Program, is in front of the NID board currently. And it would bring water from the Elizabeth George treatment plant right through Rough and Ready Road down to Penn Valley. And it would set up hydrants every 1,000 feet. Now, I need your support to get this thing passed. It's a $23.5 million project.
So when you leave this meeting, you need to attend an NID board meeting.
Hopefully that's on the grant.
All right, so where do I get on to get a job?
What type of job do you want, firefighter? Yeah.
Truck driving, I'm an old truck driver.
No, I'm saying, this is current.
Right, okay.
And we're gonna be past, voting on this within a month or 2. So, my home phone, 432-4344. Call me.
It's a great number.
And what I can say is the tank that's up on the hill is fed by an NID ditch, and it's ran down. And my understanding, maybe Don can clarify this, is that's an agreement with NID, and it's a done deal. That there'll be water, as long as the tank's there, there'll be water in the tank and there'll be water at the hydrant
Well,
at the
because
street.
the ditch goes through my property, so.
Yeah.
And there's times where it's been shut off for whatever reasons, but,
Right,
that was just something I thought I would bring up, because
right. Well, the hydrant in the tank in NID, that's pretty much a grandfathered clause agreement to provide water to it, so that's about all I can respond to that.
okay, that's fine.
Any other questions that haven't been, yes, sir.
I'd just like to ask the chief, the benefit packages paid to the rough and ready firefighters, is that typical of other firefighting districts?
No,
Way low.
no.
It would seem to be incredibly low.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Very low.
Yeah, most of in fact, I think all of the other districts that have paid staff, while they might not have the higher level of PERS plans, all contribute to PERS, CalPERS for the retirement. They all provide a higher level of medical benefits. I think Rough and Ready is probably right there at the very low end of every one of those benefits to provide. But as a growing, as a department that kind of grew out of being a volunteer department into that, those are the steps that everybody takes. Is that you got to start somewhere with those positions, and unfortunately, the budgets didn't support really where they went to get those. But
I just raise it up because it makes recruitment incredibly difficult when firefighters have an opportunity to work.
it does, yeah. And the better the benefits that you pay, the more attractive that is for applicants.
And kudos for our firemen, most of them came through the volunteer department and got hired within the station. So, they're moving up, but they could easily go places and get paid more, but, their heart's here right now, so.
But the presumption would be, if annexation goes forward, that this would be staffed with people who are paid the same as a Penn Valley.
Correct, yeah, they would be,
Because they're
yeah.
your employees.
They would be
right?
our employees, yeah, this would just be, if the annexation were approved, this would be just, at any of our other stations, is that they would have the medical benefits, health benefits, retirement, uniform, all the same as any other Penn Valley employee.
Yeah.
You got a question back there, yes?
As a Rough and Ready citizen, I would like to thank the Penn Valley District for this annexation proposal, and I would really, would like LAFCo, the county, to really make this annexation happen. It'll benefit, I think, all the residents. Also, you guys are going to be looking at other districts that are going to be having these problems in the future. So if you do that tax reallocation thing, I know it's going to affect some other districts, but if you can stop one district from being uncovered, maybe that will help some of the other districts know how to go forward with their issues also. I just really think that the county needs to make this a top priority instead of some of the other things that they do. I won't say what those things are, but fire is very, very important in this area. But I really appreciate Penn Valley's district's offers and work and everything that they have done for Rough and Ready.
Thank you.
Make sure that the language of this, from the county's perspective, is that it doesn't set a precedent. So everybody else comes knocking at the door for an increase of allocation of property tax.
Well, it's obvious it's a situation throughout the county, and they're gonna have to set a precedence to solve the problem. It's this problem now, it's gonna be another one soon.
Proactively instead of reactively.
Yeah, so this is the avenue to start and solve the problem. And I know the county's working on it, and we all think it's not fast enough, but.
Well, and as a side note too, LAFCo is funding a study of all fire districts in the county, including Eastern County, to try to be out in front of another situation like this. And it may not be the information that all the fire districts want at the end of the day, but at least it will give us, as LAFCO and the county, some perspective of what those pitfalls may be, not maybe tomorrow, but 5, 10 years from now. Any other questions that haven't been answered yet? Yes.
At this point, I'd like to say something for the county. I know we all pick on the county, but we all say the county's the end. They're the money people. I think everyone realizes that the county has probably 100 places to spend every dollar that they have in their budget. And we all think what we have is a priority and should be. I personally, not as a LAFCo member, but as an individual, feel that the single most important thing in this county is fire. It's just something that needs to be addressed to me as far as number one on the line. So even though I may criticize or I may tell the county, hey, you can find the money, we have to understand that they have a lot of other obligations. But I want to let the county know that we do appreciate what they do and how they handle the different problems. We have the homeless, we have housing, we have all these other situations. But to me, fire is the most important. So hopefully we can get something out of this by having a meeting and talking. So thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Yes, sir.
When you guys make your decision, are you guys gonna decide what proposal you're gonna put to the county? Does your actual proposal have any authority at the county?
So, again, I prefaced it earlier that we can offer some conditions in the final document of what we adopt for dissolution or for the annexation. And then those, they don't carry necessarily weight, teeth to actually, we can offer a suggestion. We don't know yet how it's going to be responded. We haven't seen a final document yet. But within the purview of what we can do as LAFCO, within the LAFCO law, we can only craft a document that can meet acceptance. And then as Scott, our attorney, mentioned, is that there's also a discussion period that can be challenged 30 days after that. So on one hand, we can offer conditions of approval. As far as an enforcement factor of that, not so much.
So it's mainly just a recommendation.
Right. But it puts it out there on the table, and then,
There's, I think,
Scott, you want to add, SR?
It would be more than a recommendation.
Well, it would be terms and conditions of the approval.
Yes, and those are legally enforceable conditions that would bind the county. So, but we are limited in our conditioning authority.
Okay, yes. What he said. All right, yes.
Yeah, I just had a couple comments. I think it's remarkable, and it's a real tribute to this community that you could run a fire station as long as you did with that amount of money. It's woefully underfunded to run a fire station for as long as you did. And it says a lot about the character and quality of the community that you could do it and that you were willing to do it. It does, a lot of this comes down to the money. I think the most important thing here, though, as we go forward at LAFCO, is to ensure that we all need to look at that the essential services are provided no matter what happens, no matter what approvals are made, no matter what annexations happen, that in the process of that transition, that this community is safe. It has to be the single biggest focus of what we do. But after that, it goes to the money, and so I get it. You know, if there's not enough money for Rough and Ready to run their fire department, even if Penn Valley annexes it, there's still not enough money to run that department. And it'll likely be staffed with employees who cost more because of benefits and everything else. So that leaves you in the position of going to the county and asking for more property tax, essentially. So I'm trying to think about that and putting myself in the county's shoes. And I'm listening to a system that, I think it's inevitable that other districts are going to struggle the same way that Rough and Ready is, the smaller district, just because of the costs. We do that. I'm also listening to you in your hyperbole describe a system that's shaky and wobbly and thin at best. That's what I'm getting from you. So if I'm the county and I'm thinking about I gotta open up, money to fund one district to keep one area safe, I want the county to be looking at that whole system. I want the county to understand county-wide what's it gonna take to ensure that the citizens of this county are safe when it comes to fire. And that won't mean, it may mean opening the door the first time, but it is about precedent. So if we do open up, give property tax to one special district so that they can function, the line starts here. That's, it does. So I think those are concerns, but I think looking at the whole system and how it needs to work together and function better to ensure the most effective and economical way of delivering services needs to happen.
Can I respond to
Sure.
that as a county person? And
I'm new to all of this, although I did serve in the city of Grass Valley for many years, so very familiar with how the fire service works. But just to respond to that, while you're right, you know, the county does need to be looking over at the overall picture. Understand that we, as the Board of Supervisors, have zero authority over the fire districts. We can't, I know some of them are represented here today, but we can't force them to come to the table to look at that broader solution. So what it's gonna take from the community is to make sure that the fire districts are willing participants in whatever the decisions are made and that they're willing to come to the table. I've been on the end of very contentious negotiations between fire districts, Grass Valley, Nevada City, and Consolidated over the years. And there has not always been that full cooperation from everybody to be on the same page for what we want to do. So I just, you know, just want to say that while I know that I'm really open to and willing to listen to all the discussion, appreciate the fact that we also need the cooperation and the collaboration from all the fire districts, and that when you talk about the big picture.
No, I completely agree with that, but there has to be some leadership at some level to take this to the appropriate level to have this conversation. And the most likely entity to do that is the county. I get that all the districts are freestanding, that they're funding and they have their own sources. But at the same time, if I'm coming to the county asking for more money to keep my district functional, there's leverage there about how these things work. So that's I'm just looking for that bigger conversation and who can host that. Because there's a lot of parties.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you that we have to look at the bigger picture here for all of this.
So in the county, in the time that I've been here, we've had numerous discussions amongst the fire agencies and things of looking at countywide consolidation of all of the fire districts together. The most recent one was about 3-4 years ago now, and probably came the closest. We did work with the county on that quite a bit. There was a lot of collaborative efforts, and there was a polling. The county funded a research polling study, and we were looking at a countywide consolidation and one countywide fire assessment to fund all of those that would have been floated to the public. And unfortunately, the polling came back pretty negative on that, and they were looking at about a $400 per year parcel charge for each resident in the entire county, and that's really where the whole process went down. And they did a little bit of it. There was really not much public education that took place prior to it. The public education took place in the polling of a $400 fee, a $300 fee, a $212 fee. And the community overwhelmingly wanted to support more staff, fire stations, paramedics, 3 people on all these engines, this larger fire district, but they didn't want to pay for it. And that's, you know, and I think Supervisor Hook was there a little bit towards when you first became a supervisor. We were in that mix of doing that, and that's really kind of where it really kind of dropped off. And you are absolutely correct that there has been some issues with some of the other agencies of not wanting to get to the table and not wanting to participate and input information in those things. And it's, you know, I think there's a piece there where we've got to overcome, or we've got to say, here's the agencies that are moving forward and the ones that are left behind, and if you don't jump in and join, you're going to get what you get. And you know, I'm not sure, because I think some of the communities and some of the agencies are willing to move forward, and where some may or may not be is the real hang-up. And I don't know I think that's going to be the hard part, is engaging those fire, whether it's the fire boards themselves, or you know, or the fire chiefs of those organizations that don't want to give that up and don't want to lose that, you know, and or a name of an organization or things like that, because there's a lot of pride in the fire service, and to give up the name on the patch that you've been wearing to wear somebody else's patch, there's issues that kind of go along with that. But I think for the betterment of the community, that's what we have to look at from our side over here, and then, you know, the collaborative effort of working together. And I absolutely agree. I think that the county can hopefully be that one to kind of be the lead on that with us and work with us going forward together to come up with some solutions for everybody. Because like we said earlier, again, failure is not an option for us.
All right. SR, Scott, do you need more focused direction from the commission, or do you have direction, what would you like from us?
That smile.
I think, obviously we have the description of Cortina on Sarasburg, the LAFCo documents, and legislation that talks about the crafting of the dissolution agreement. I think it's pretty clear that we want to have language in there about some responsibility of the county offering some kind of compensation or remuneration, not too specific language, but to make sure that the responding agencies are compensated in absence of the automatic assist responsibilities, and to try to put some language in the dissolution that helps fortify the importance and urgency of the property tax negotiation to facilitate the annexation agreement. Is that kind of sum it up? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm looking for next steps too. So our next meeting is in June.
June 22nd.
So what would happen then at our June meeting is, I'm just curious, so what we would be looking at in June is, one, whether we're going to follow through with the dissolution, and two, where the annexation would go. So that will all happen at our next meeting, is that correct?
At the next meeting, you would have the dissolution proposal would be in front of you. And we've heard you saying that it would be important to bring forward some kind of agreement for continued coverage with for this area, either with neighboring agencies or the successor agency and the neighboring agencies that would include some kind of compensation. We don't know if the Penn Valley annexation proposal would be ready for hearing at that point. I suspect it will not be ready for hearing at that point because it is contingent upon completion of the negotiation. So what you would be looking at in June would be possibly just a dissolution with considerations for the issues that have been discussed today in terms of continuing interim coverage plans.
That's what I was curious.
Need a motion, head nodding, what would you like?
I think someone else had it.
Oh.
There's no questions.
You said the next meeting, June 22nd, where at?
At the County Administrative Center, in the Board of Supervisors chambers.
I'd like to make a comment, and I know that I beat up on you, SR, and Sue also about the urgency in getting this done. And listening to the meeting today, it's even a bigger scope, I think, about all the boxes that need to be checked and everything needs to be filled out. And I get that, but fire season is not going to wait for any of this. And I'm sure that we can apologize from Rough and Ready that this is at the worst possible time that we could have done this, right? If this was December, we might be a little bit more relaxed and not so much on edge. But if there's any way to speed up a process, if you need any help, Tom Nelson is right here and he'd be more than happy to do whatever is needed to help speed up the process. So if there's anything you need from us, again, fire season won't wait, and we all pray to God that it won't be a horrible one, but if it catches us in the lurch, or if there's some area, some space that this vacuum falls into and something happens,
I agree with you, but you also have to remember the wheels of government grind slow and fine.
I know they do, and Sue has told me that, I don't even know how many times.
Good job.
But I still have to say what I say.
Well, I'm proud of calling myself a member of LAFCo because we are a functional government agency.
So, and I would say with that, I would ask SR, I'm sure that meetings are going to continue to go on between now and June with conversations with county staff and LAFCO. And so this isn't just going to be on hold. In the meantime, we're going to look at some of
That's
those
true.
issues as we go forward.
During the process of reviewing this at staff level, we'll be working with our partners and, you know, trying to find some answers to the questions that have come up today.
I just was given a note. I don't ever feel that I've been exclusionary, but are there any residents or any from the county that didn't think that they had already been given an opportunity to speak that I may have overlooked?
County staff, I think is what they meant.
Oh, okay. All right, well, counties, did anybody not get a chance to speak that has something to say? All right. Thank you, I just want to make sure that we are inclusive. All right. Any other final comments? Anything more good for the order? I think, again, believe me.
I'd like to say something real quick. I handed this out earlier in, just to reiterate the fact that we're a piece of the puzzle. And so this shows the number of calls. Rough and Ready ran 501 calls in this time period that will have to be made up. We had 170 that someone else will have to respond into our area. We ran 213 calls to assist Penn Valley and 125 calls to assist Nevada City during this time period. So when this firehouse goes empty, those calls become the burden of these other fire districts. And as you heard, everyone's already stressed to the max. So I just want to explain this so when you guys look at this, you understand that that's what that is these are representative of what we respond to, and that a bigger majority of what we respond to is outside of Rough and Ready's district. But we do have immediate response in medical aids and fire response here to our community. And when we go dark, it just goes the opposite direction. So I just want to make sure you understand that. The other thing I'd like to say is that, you know, we're proud of our facility here. It's downtown, it's a state-of-the-art, it's a beautiful facility, and I'd like to offer a tour after we're done for all of you to tour the fire station and see what's here and see what a fire station looks like with no firemen in it.
Well, thank you for that. And I just want to just kind of close a little bit about LAFCo.
Just to be clear, the responses that you referred to were to Nevada County, not Nevada City. And that those responses that Rough and Ready was covering for the consolidated fire district now drop back to the city. So as burdens increase, they increase and they increase, they increase. And you know, certainly they are an integral piece of the puzzle for Nevada County. And without that piece, there's going to be that fragility.
That's the fragility, yeah.
Just keeps increasing.
Yeah. So that is a correction. The Nevada City or Nevada County Grass Valley is covering those calls, so that puts a burden actually on them, even though it is part of Nevada County's covered district.
And just one more piece of what LAFCo is and isn't. We all sit up here, I'm a public member, we have city members, we have county members. The goal of LAFCo is that when we come in this room, we're representing all of those agencies and areas, but when we're in this room, we're LAFCO, we're not county, we're not city. And so we will take those messages back to our individual boards and agencies. But we are here with our LAFCO hats, and the premise of LAFCO is to make sure, as I said earlier, that the residents of Rough and Ready are kept as whole as possible. The providers of response are kept as whole as possible, and that when the annexation takes place, that the current recipients of services in Penn Valley will not be burdened with the expense, but that the annexation of Rough and Ready will carry on its own. That's the property tax agreement. So the citizens is our first and foremost goal.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to add something, and correct me if I'm wrong, sorry, but I'm new to LAFCO, so I may get it wrong. LAFCO is also recognizing this is a bigger issue than Rough and Ready, and that it's a longer-term issue. So they are in the midst of a municipal services review, looking at the entire county fire services, and we will be getting a report back later this year that will provide us information to take a look at the issue longer term.
But in the meantime, it's still too late for Rough and Ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to deal with the short-term issue right now, clearly.
All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining and attending this meeting. So questions were answered. We've given you a little bit more security than you had going into it. I want to thank our first responders both for being here and for what they do and staying up. And